Welcome to TradeTheMBI.com. This is John. This report is for the 25th of April, and well, we had a nice, fun time with this candle here. What we'd been seeing, and if we can just take a look at it, it's pretty straightforward. Rising shakeout. We started dipping in the shakeout right here. Fine. All that is an expectation that, hey, you're starting a lower run. From a DOC standpoint, we have this contraction here of the cyan and the green. And once they separate, the ideal situation if you're long and wanting the price to go higher would be to have green cross above the cyan, at the same time having the steel above cyan as well, and you got just the opposite. So we call this is that part of that snake routine that I was describing to you, where you start with like a closed mouth and then boom, it begins to open and the little tongue comes out of the middle of it. In this particular case, it would be the steel. Still very close to the potential of rising above, but it's that separation, and the bigger it gets, the more you expect a downdraft. Well, here's your downdraft, and it's just that simple. And for us, it was easy enough because we had the zones marked out. It's like, okay, hey, above that 50% level at 2671, yeah, you're long. Below it, you're short. And then boom, we crashed all the way below the 23 as well. But again, that becomes a pivot point now, right above there. And you can see that from the 39.25 range to above. Hey, we got a nice long setup again from the daily, but this is weak still. So we're still dropping in the shakeout. And the thing is, within a day, you can still get a broad movement. I mean, the ATR is still 40. We moved more than that because we were like over minus 50 on the day. Keep that in mind. You can get significant amount of change within one setup at this particular point. So, and this is like what I was talking about with this conway, a little bit of the breakout, and then it rolls over. And that's usually when it starts to base right about here and begin another cycle to the upside. And we're getting oversold pretty good there from the DOC. We just see some green activity, sort of like here with the euro. Despite this extreme oversold, it hasn't broken the range, not really done anything. You know, when you have that big day, the other day, sort of, people don't really move that much because in that particular case, they're going to have to repatriate euros if they're selling the dollar, unless they're buying treasuries, which of course they're not, because the yield on those is only going up. Of course, yes, you're going to buy your treasuries to get a better yield without the risk, because this is going to be something that will drive people from the market as rates start to climb, because it's better to take a risk-free couple points versus having a capital risk with the market that, from a lot of consensus is overbought or extended from a valuation standpoint. Those things are all relative and they change by the day. So, but that's what people do with their money. So you just have to respect that. Oil, all of these massive excess buildup. No, come on. This is just getting squeezed from a practical standpoint. But needless to say, it's going to have an impact because those higher costs are going to have to get passed through. It could have second half of the year implications on the economy and putting a little squeeze. Plus, if the Fed continues to raise rates, that's going to have the biggest impact because it's going to slow housing and stuff dramatically. Not to mention credit and availability, but that's also caused what some people might call a stabilization in the market of, not getting hyper exuberant. And not unsurprisingly, a nice little bounce back from gold. It's been in a pretty much decay since this DOC spread short setup. This particular case should be falling orange, which is typically bullish until it makes that first pivot up. And so that's where we get into the day. So this is the whole day view almost. Gotta scroll back further to get the beginnings of it. And it was pretty innocuous overall, and then things started to get a little exciting. So let's start to expand this chart some so that we can get a better view of what we're talking about. So coming back over, we were talking about, we had that nice gold run that was continuing with higher shakeout. Then it began to roll over in a beautiful DOC spread signal right about here, came in, just just doesn't get any cleaner. You have red rolling over, you've got green already under, you had cyan moving above. You did have a reset of the steel, but everything going in your direction to just follow that. Now, from my viewpoint, the earliest point you would have seen this spread taking place is as soon as the green dips below. What you look for in this particular case is a spread between the green and the cyan. So once they cross, which would be right here, is the earliest indication. And that's just a little bit higher up at 84 versus the next bar closes at 82. A couple of points, at least here you have the guarantee of the continuation of the rise in the cyan. You can also do the same setup with the orange and steel. And again, that usually begins again, you're going to still need the same green below red, but you would think of it as a mouth that opens. So if, just like this crossing here, you would need to see orange move up at the same time you're seeing steel move down, and that's like the opening of it, and then it begins to close again. And I was describing this as the cyan becomes the tongue, and then it gets cut off, and that lets you know that that's the end of the short once it gets cut off right there. And that's exactly what happened. Had a nice downturn, boom. But then we started mucking around, and again we started to get, and I look for points where you get an extreme move from either the orange or the steel, simply because that represents your greatest algo activity. Otherwise, you're just in what we would call normal trading range. So that first precursor started here with orange dipping below, which was bullish in that standpoint, and then it flipped over. At the same time, you had the green turn down and the cyan go above it. So right here, you're getting that spread that turns it around, and it's just below the 76% line. And that just began a nice little short decline. It's pretty consistent all the way through. And then you ended up with a very soft buy signal here. We ended up with this dip going through. And this is what I was talking about before in my videos. It's like before we used to talk about the steel crossing the cyan, bullish. Green coming from below red, bullish. Orange dipping below red and green, bullish. So this was like, you know, the holy grail of bullishness. But the reality is that what we find is if you don't have the cyan below 6 1/4, and in this particular case, if I put it up there, well, we can't get it on the screen for you right here, but it's minus 239 when this happens. If it dips down like it did here, that's when it becomes bullish. Or secondarily, you need the pivot lower of the orange. So this bar right here, when we go up, this is where the buy is. And you can see it does take off much better from that particular point. I'll zoom in a little bit further here since we're playing with the DOC in an expansive kind of way. And then we end up with this lovely gold coloring, and all the gold coloring is on the shakeout. We have the rising gold line. What that's kind of looking for is it's showing an extended trend. In this particular case, you're already moving south, and it just extends that move. And then even still with the rising of the price into the gold below 50%, literally that's really all you're looking for is a move to the 50%. And then as soon as you can get a short signal, which in this particular case, we already had green below red, didn't have what you would call a traditional DOC spread. And so this becomes an important visual construct here, because you had cyan below and it comes above. It gives you kind of a, you know, the super clarion, momentum move. But in this case, you ended up with that strong spike of orange up to the 7.5. At the same time, steel crossing down. So it's that, again, opening of the mouth with your lovely tongue of the cyan coming through. But at this particular point, you have what we like to call this the alien, because you have a second mouth, which is the cyan rising, green falling below, and the green is below red, which makes, in effect, the red, the tongue. So you have two mouths opening, sort of like an alien where you have the creature opens its mouth and then that second mouth comes out. Same concept. So you're getting a double whammy. And boy, was it a double whammy, because it started this move. The gold ended right down there at the lows as we were going through, and You can see at that particular point, with it being the red, it got cut off midway through, but then we end up with these special zones, and this is where it turns white. Now, this is all going to change colors later on. Just because you see the gold now, what's going to happen is you'll probably see one gold bar, and then it will just return to either red or green, and then when it flips, probably get a secondary gold bar that's half colored and then flips to it. So you may get this one that will be half gold, the lower half, and then the upper half would be red to indicate that it's still going to be a negative trend. And then this one would probably flip to green as it comes up through there. And then again, a secondary red, and then it would flip to just normal red, because this range right here was just normal red. But the key factor in this is no buy signals come in, because then we end up with above 13.5 with the steel. And that sets up special configurations where you're looking very specifically for unique setups within the buy, and we get none of them. I mean, look at this drop. It was beautiful because we were short all the way up there at the 167 range off that most recent one, and it just continued to plummet. And then we were watching, we even had a brief little gold stint right there where it popped up for a fraction of a moment. And then it was live, and we were starting to post this because we ended up with the big separation right here of steel rising at the same time orange. So this, again, that opening of the mouth construct from its earliest standpoint, that's even before you get complete dip of orange below. And then it extends for another bar or so. But then as I was talking, you get that softness with the orange rising. And I drew it right here in trend lines for a visual to see. So it shows basically this effect where the steel is coming down. And we were drawing this in real time, and so then you get this effective spike up like that, and then we had the orange right over here. And it was funny because price just started to, I mean, the DOC started to mimic what had been drawn. So there it is with that. It helps when they're like in alignment. Geez, pushing too many buttons there. So it gets into alignment where they like meet. And the closer they meet and the more dramatic this is, the better. It still works even if they're further apart. Here they were reasonable range apart, and then it's this dip down here. Now, what was interesting about this one, the orange dipped down, but the steel continued lower. And that's why we got a mixed result, and that was kind of weak. And then as soon as it turned back up, that was sort of pretty much the end of the run at that point, because you had the cyan, moves above green right here, kind of ends the whole fun of it, and sure enough, all we did was go right back to the lows. So pretty effective in being able to see it. Then we ended up a little bit later here in the action with the gold starting again. Ended up with the rise, and in this particular case, we just had sort of flat wielding through here until orange started to come down. It was sort of just a soft muck rise. Still bullish because we kept breaking into new zones with the red, and the most recent one was right there, just as we started to take off. And it just got a little bit above. I can get rid of that horizontal line, didn't mean to move it. And then we ended up right here, traditional DOC spread, but you could see where it got all condensed. And then we had the spike up of the orange at the same time. Steel's going down, it's the earliest precursor. And then it was just a matter of the next bar. And you can certainly wait for these confirmations. You get full green under cyan, so you get that alien effect with the double mouth, and red cascading, and then that typically when it breaks below new zones. And then we started over again with the crossover, and right here they separated with the steel rising, orange falling. At the same time, steel is crossing above cyan, and that led to the start of the next round. That took us all the way to the highs. And we kind of stayed there until, well, in the wee hours, even when I wasn't awake. Maybe you guys, probably in the afternoon for everyone else in the States. A DOC spread. So, literally, they're connected with the steel and the orange, and then boom, big separation there. And that's kind of held pretty much through. So, that's the current state of affairs. I just thought I'd go over that one. I know it's a bit long, but worth doing it. And it's a holiday here in Italy, so, free time. As always, trade well. We'll talk again later.